Okay, so then the first one I've got is rationalization. So you can see kind of the definition of it. Occurs when we tell an element of truth but deny the larger truth of the moment. A student says, I cheated on a test, might say, I only cheated on a few questions, but I answered most of them. Okay, so most often when I think of rationalization, what I'm going to think of is, you'll see that domestic violence question. He'll say, I wouldn't have hit her if she'd made dinner on time. We're trying to rationalize our own behavior by making it somehow somebody else's fault. Or there's a question I've seen about a mother who is late to pick up her child from daycare, and she's like, but traffic was heavy. And I think we've all made those excuses. But remember, rationalization is, again, it's an unconscious choice. As we go through these, most of us have done these. Freud would say that they are normal, natural part of what happens. And the defense mechanisms, of course, according to him, were necessary for our ego to be our, because we had our id, that's my pleasure principle. And then my superego said, no, never do it. And then, of course, then my ego was the one we were dealing with. So if you ever see any questions, it's the ego we deal with. The id and the superego are fighting back and forth. So I'm on vacation this week. My id says, Pam, let's go eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And my superego says, well, there's a gym. My id didn't hear that. My id just hears eat. So that's your pleasure principle. And the ego, of course, is what balances it out. Okay. Regression. So it is easy for regression when you see it as a little kid. Okay, so when you have a second or third child and the first child then begins to wet the bed again, or he acts like a baby. So those are easy. Most often you won't get the questions that are that easy. What you'll get is an adult male who is doesn't like what his boss said to him, and he decides that he's going to get up and throw a chair or slam the door. Maybe someone who's very, very upset and they're crying and they're in the fetal position. Those are all things that would be example of what would happen in regression as an adult. Okay. So I've seen this one also. A lady regresses into adolescence, starts to walk or talk like her younger self when a person has confronted her and was confronted to some loss, maybe to a back journey. I've seen that question actually in one of the sample tests about regression in an adult, that, she begins to act like she's 17, 18, or 20, and she's hanging out in nightclubs and hanging with her friends, her daughter's friends. That definitely is going back. And we don't think about that normally. Normally we think about the child who's acting younger, but an adult. So that one's a little bit too easy. You have to know that what you're looking for is an adult. Okay. Sublimation. You want to give me an example of sublimation? What is that, and what does it look like?
That would be someone who has maybe difficulties with his dad and doesn't talk about it, but then joins the football team to take out that aggression and play.
So that is probably a good one. I just want to make sure we clarify. So if you, sublimation is when you have a feeling that's inappropriate. I think you're probably referring more to displacement. Displacement is the same feeling. So feeling for feeling. I'm mad at my dad, and then I'm going to go out and take it on somebody else. So sublimation is, I've got some really pent up anger that's really not appropriate. If society saw how mad I was, they would freak out. And then I played football. So it's a socially appropriate way to let out some inappropriate feelings. Does that make sense? Is that what you're referring to?
It's kind of like putting that negative energy into something positive. Like
You got it.
I want to hit somebody, so I take up boxing.
You got it. Or, I really like to the feel of like meat in my hands, like raw human flesh. That's kind of strange, right? But if I'm a butcher, you wouldn't even think about it, would you? Okay, he touches, he cuts up meat, no big deal. Okay. So I always remember Sublimation. If you're probably not as old as I am, but back in the day when we had those really big CD things, you know, we called them albums. The hard rock bands would flip the. They said if you flipped it over, you would hear like devil worship. So like AC/DC and all the, I don't know, and I can't remember anybody else, but so the example was if you flipped it over and played it slowly, there was a hidden message from the devil. Because the devil worship music on the other side wasn't acceptable in society, but if you bought the other side of it, it would be okay. Okay, so that's where sublimation. There also used to be a thought that if you ever went to the drive-in, that maybe in between scenes there were like Coke commercials that were subliminal, they were hidden. So you didn't really see them, but suddenly you were thirsty for a Coke. Okay, you have to be old to remember those, but yes, that's what we used to have. It was called sublimation. You'll see the test, a willful woman, a woman who, because women should be sweet and, kind, all that good stuff. So a woman who has her own mind, her own opinion, and becomes an attorney. That's sublimation. She is letting out an appropriate way to let out her, what society would deem inappropriate. Okay, withdrawal. So there's about 20, 25 defense mechanisms. The top 10 are the ones we'll really go over. Some of the ones are easy to figure out by themselves. So withdrawal is simply what it is. So if someone faces rejection, they just kind of withdraw from the situation. Okay, so what personality disorder does this remind you of? People who feel uncomfortable around others and therefore they don't interact because they're afraid of being judged.
Avoidant.
Yes, I don't have my bell with me, but yes. My avoidant personality disorders. Those are the one who really like people. They do. They want to hang around you. However, they're really afraid that you're going to judge them. Well, those are my avoidant personality disorder. Okay. So my schizoids versus my schizotypal, remember those? So the schizoids are the ones who just really don't like you at all. They are loving COVID. They're like thrilled with COVID. Oh my gosh, no one knocks on my door. We don't have to worry about anything. Life is so good. Okay, my schizotypals are more typically like a schizophrenic. So those are the ones, let me share this page. So my schizotypals are more like the schizophrenics. So think of schizotypal, more typically like schizophrenia. They are not as avoidant as my schizoids. My schizoids are okay with like never talking to people. They don't even want to make friends with their pet fish. The schizotypal, you would recognize them just because of their very bizarre behaviors. More typically like a schizophrenic, but they're not having the homicide the illusions or the illusions or hallucinations. Okay, but they are very, very strange. Okay. Displacement. We've all done this. What we're going to do is remember it's feeling for feeling though. So I am mad at a boss or mad at someone else, and I take it off on someone who's easier or who's closer. And my children never watch my videos ever. But I apologize to them all the time because I'm so guilty of that. I have 3 children, and the one who is in front of me at the time gets it. And I'm not necessarily always mad at her, but I am angry at the other 2 who are far away, who said something, and she or angry and just I'm stressed in general, angry at life or things like that, and I take it on her. She didn't deserve that. Displacement is also can be it doesn't have to be a person. It can be an inanimate object. So I've got 3 kids, and they've grown up as a daughter of a therapist. So I'll get mad at her, and my daughter will say, you're displacing, Mom. You're not really angry at me. You're angry at blah, blah, blah. And she's right. She's absolutely right. So I think we're all guilty of that. Again, remember, those are what Freud would say. They protect our egos. That for some reason, if we actually let all that anger out on the other object, the one that deserves it, it would be more threatening. It would be not safe for us. So when we displace it, then we're able to protect our very tender egos and maybe our jobs sometimes. Okay. Simple denial. So for the test, if it's a drug or alcohol question, it's always, always, always going to be denial. So that's one of the biggest, it's not a river in the Nile. If an alcoholic or drug user is talking, they are lying. They're always in denial. My pedophiles are the same way. If you see a question about the group of pedophiles who are in a group or things like that, let the group call it on them, because that is the nature of being a pedophile and an alcoholic. You are lying. So if it's one of the other questions, make sure that's the only defense mechanism, okay? Because denial is one of the simple defense mechanisms, and many times they're trying to trick you to make sure that it's not simply denial, okay? Alcohol, drug question, that's going to be your answer. But if it's anything else and denial is one of the choices, just rule out the others. Make sure denial is not the one we're looking for, okay? And again, it's simple. So Freud would say it's unconscious. It's not a choice. It's not like I wake up one day and say, wow, I'm going to, not tell anybody or not admit it. But it really is an unconscious choice. We block external events from our awareness. We just, it's like, no, just because I've had 6 DUIs, I'm not an alcoholic. I can stop anytime I want to. That it really protects us from the pain. Okay. But that is very, very common in our substance abuse community. And that's something that we need to make sure we're aware of. Okay. Identification. So, do we know what that one is? You want to share? Come on, be brave. So, identification really is that. Okay.
Hello?
So,
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, yes.
Okay, because I did a practice test the other day. Is it similar? Like, it was one question that said there was the father was beating the child, and then the child went to school and started beating on other children or something like that. Is that pretty similar?
That could be it. That could definitely be it. That could be it. Sometimes that one is called like identity with the aggressor, though, or identification with the aggressor. So if that were the one, then I would. And most often the test is going to give you 2 right answers. They're not going to give you because it could be either one of those. So yes, I would choose that defense mechanism. Okay. So someone else text something. What was that chat I missed? Find out your mom has cancer and you try to find treatments. Rochelle, that one is intellectualization. That's intellectualization. And I can tell you a real life example because that's exactly what I did. When my son was diagnosed with cancer, he's a survivor, but he was 19 and he was diagnosed with cancer. And what did mom do first? Go to WebMD, duh. Right? So that's what moms do. That's what people do. So instead of feeling the feeling, I went and researched and made sure I had the most accurate information. For me, it was because I couldn't let the feelings overtake me. I was the mom, and I had to be strong for the mom. And I can rationalize that, of course, Freud would say. But intellectualization is when we avoid the feelings. Okay. Identity, though, is when we really over-identify with someone else. We can also over-identify with our label, our titles. So if I logged in and said, I am Dr. Pamela Turner and blah, 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 and all that came from you was my identity back, how I labeled myself, as opposed to who I really am, that's intellectualization as well. I'm sorry, that's identification as well. Okay, so it is identifying ourselves some way that is really not who we are. Okay, and of course, example is that Stockholm Syndrome when she over-identified with her kidnappers. You might see a question also about a client who you don't even know their first name. On their email, they say, hello, this is so-and-so, or in their any conversation with you, they only say, hello, this is so-and-so, using their title, not their name. So they've just lost their identity whatsoever, and they're over-identifying with someone else.
Would another example be like a person that prostitutes and then she's trying to recruit other girls?
Oh, look at you in real life and make me think. Okay, so then let's look at this. So so what we know in general is that those are my human trafficking people. Mm-hmm. So then they do you think they're identifying with their pimp? Who do you think they're over-identifying with?
Well, I guess traffic, and now they're trafficking other girls. Like, not that I've seen it personally, but I know many times it's they were once in that position. Now they're recruiting other girls to do kind of the same thing.
So okay, but are they?
Would that be the same as identification?
Or so if they're identifying with the girl, they're not losing their identity.
But no, with the pimp.
Yes, I could see that. So they're over-identifying with their pimp. They've kind of lost who they are. So they see themselves as kind of, who he is. So I guess I would use that.
Okay, I just was, because it was just something when they were talking, I was thinking of that from something else. Okay.
But that's a good question. I think I would agree with that because Freud would say that. And remember, when you're talking on the test, we're talking about different theories. So according to Freud, he would agree with that. So if you came from a different therapist, a different theory, then yes. But Freud would say definitely that's what she's doing. And she's protecting her ego because if she really kind of let that guard down and realized, what she was actually doing, that would not be okay with who she was. So she's protecting her ego by over-identifying with him. That makes sense. Yeah. 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 So the question, what you asked me though, remember every theorist would have a different opinion, and when we come to a defense mechanism, that's just a Freudian thing. So then a different theorist would have a different opinion, but Freud would agree with exactly what you said. Good question. Thank you. Okay. Fantasy. I think we've all done that. We've imagined, we've kind of escaped reality by, wishing this fantasy thing would happen. Okay. Daydreaming, all those things. That'd be something that Freud would do. Just again, protecting our ego. Compensation. That's often sometimes also an overcompensation. Okay. So the test won't go into direct or indirect compensation. Most often what you're looking for is, I think of those, and if there's any, Disney dads in here, I apologize today, but those Disney dads, the dads who don't see the kids during the week or regularly have a lot of time to spend with the kids. And then when it's their time, they overindulge. They're buying everything at, the Toys R Us. You're buying everything in sight instead of just really spending time. I'll see that a lot with I used to work with former drug users that gotten out of prison and, they hadn't seen their kids. And this is like the first Christmas in like 5 years they got to spend with their kids. And they're worried about, trying to buy every toy in sight because they're feeling very bad for what they couldn't give. Okay. On the test, I've seen a question about a woman who is overweight and she goes shopping with her friends. And while they're shopping, she can't keep up. So she buys them all very expensive gifts. That's compensation. And again, it's most often overcompensation. I'm trying to make up for what I couldn't do, didn't do, things like that. Okay, again, guilty. I work a lot. So I indulge my children when I shouldn't. because I feel very guilty. That's my compensation. Okay. We talked about repression and suppression. So the difference you'll see is okay. So repression, what you'll see is you don't remember it. Okay. That it is, Freud believed, that's the first thing he knew. He thought that everything was in your unconscious and you had repressed it. And if he could bring that from your unconscious, then you would be able to deal with it. And that was the constant belief he had, was all your issues were hidden. And if he brought them up for you, then you could deal with them. So repression is not remembering what happened. So if you were sexually abused as a kid and you really just don't remember, that is repression. So if the question says she was abused as a child, however, she chooses not to deal with it, that is suppression. Okay, so repression, you're not aware of it. You're not. It's down there. The therapist's job is to bring it up. You have no idea that it even happened. And then suppression, of course, is you're aware of it, but you choose not to. Okay, it can be defined as motivated forgetting. And again, because most often it's too painful and your unconscious is trying to protect your ego, so it is pushed way down. Okay. Reaction formation. Give me an example, guys, somebody. I know somebody in my group knows. Reaction formation.
Is that when someone say that they don't like that person, but actually they do like that the person?
You are absolutely right. So what I always think about is, remember when the boys were in middle school and they were mean to you? Yeah, girls mature. It's just, those are just facts. I'm not trying to say boys are immature, men are immature, but that was a fact. We know that boys mature later than girls. So at 12, 13, the girls are beginning to mature. They're getting some breasts and some hips, and the boys are not there yet, and they're throwing rocks at you. Okay, so they're pulling your hair, calling your names, all that good stuff. So that's what it looks like. Now, in an adult, it's going to look like me, forming that reaction. But again, it's not purposeful. It's not like I wake up and think, let me go do something the opposite of how I feel. It is a defense mechanism. Okay, so a question on the test you'll see is a man is attracted to his roommate, his gay roommate, and he goes out and he fight. Well, this question will say he goes out and he pickets and jeers at gay rights festivals, and he comes home and he's secretly attracted to his roommate. Okay, so that's what reaction formation is. I lost my job today and I'm really worried about money. So I go out and I, plan a whole summer vacation for my kids. So what happening of losing your job is so painful, it hurts to deal with, so you just wouldn't deal with it. Okay? You don't like your boss, but you act like you do. So that's just called common sense, but yes, peer reaction formation. To be a reaction formation, you have to make sure that you actually did something. Not only do you not like your boss, but then you would bring them like candy, or go out of your way to show them that you really, they think they like you, so they'll think that you like them. Okay. Projection. This is a difficult one for some people. I always think of the back of a movie theater, and my feelings, my thoughts are projected for the whole wide world to see. Okay. So therefore, if this is what I think, then everybody else must think the same thing. Okay. So projection occurs when an individual threatened by his own anger or other feelings accuses another of harboring hostile thoughts. So again, my feelings. I'm thinking, wow, you know what? Oh, blah, blah, blah. Look at me. I can't believe this is happening. I'm overweight. I'm ugly. I'm this. And I see people in the corner, and I'm sure they're thinking the same thing about me. It's my own thoughts, what I think being pushed out. But yet I think you think that because I think that. Okay, because again, my feelings, my thoughts are projected on that big screen. Introjection is the opposite. Introjection is taking it in. So somebody, you see someone out there, they say something about you or something that you think is about you, and you take it in. It may or not be true, but you just take it in. Okay. Example of projection: the spouse cheats on the wife, and she said, and she says that she is also a cheater. The spouse cheats on the wife. Okay. And then the spouse says, "Oh, you must be cheating." It's his own stuff that he's projecting, so she must be cheating. Let's get negativism. Okay. So those are my major ones. Questions on those guys? Okay. So if you're using APGAR, she's got a pretty good list in there. Those are ones that you just kind of need to know the terminology. And then when you know the terminology, it's much easier just to go back and then apply those to questions. Those are not necessarily my first and next questions that you would need. What's the difference between sublimation and undoing? So sublimation is hiding my feelings. I've got a feeling that is not appropriate, so I'm letting it out in a different way. However, then undoing is when I've done something. I cheated on my wife. I did something awful, and then I get her something to make it okay. So sublimation is hiding something that is definitely that society would not think that was appropriate. Okay, but undoing is that I've done something, and I'm going to go out and overcompensate many times to try to make up for what I've done. The key to remember is, though, these are Freudian terms, and they are unconscious. Okay, so when you look for the question, you're going to look for the terms psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, or being unconscious. Okay? Yes, you want to make it up to the person. But again, so it happens all the time, but remember, Freud would say it's not a conscious choice. So my wife and I had a fight. I was wrong. I go buy her flowers. But he would say it wasn't as if you thought about it. It was just the way that your ego worked to protect it. Okay. So then this will record as a separate recording than a recording for earlier. When I finish with this one, I'll hit end. Let me stop recording now and you'll see it.